neighbors. Welcome back for episode number 33 of Rednecks Rising podcast. Things have been sporadic around here lately. Episodes might not be as consistent as they once were, but we aren't giving up. There are still going to be episodes, rest assured, one way or another. In fact, today's episode was made possible with the help of a couple of friends. I just want to give a huge shout out to our friends River, Michael, and Seth for helping out with the editing and the uploading of today's episode. Not to mention, River Michael was the one to reach out to me in the first place about recording and was the connecting thread who brought all of our incredible guests together for the conversation that you're about to hear. In today's episode, I had the immense privilege of sitting down with powerful organizers and faith leaders on the front lines of the Stop Cop City movement in Atlanta. This episode was recorded back in early August and features the voices of Reverend Kiana Jones-Moore, Minister Matthew Johnson, musician River Michael, and Belkis Teran, mother of the late activist known as Tortuguita, who was assassinated by Georgia state troopers in January of 2023, shot over a dozen times with their hands raised and their legs crossed. We delve into the history of the land in Atlanta at the center of the struggle against Cop City. We talk about the organizing efforts and the murder of Tortuguita, the clear illustration that Cop City models for the intersection of issues across militarization, the environment, strategic divestment from communities, and the criminalization of poverty, and more. As we jump into today's episode, I want to acknowledge the moment that we're currently in, leading up to yet another most important election of our lifetime. That was sarcasm, if you couldn't pick up on that. This moment where we are being asked to make critical decisions, not just about who will be the next CEO of the USA, but also who will be calling the shots in our states, counties, cities, and towns. And as we've talked about many times before on the pod, those things are all connected. Your local officials are making decisions that impact even the most global of issues that we care about, from providing funding to construct arms manufacturing facilities, enabling cop cities to militarize police forces, while criminalizing houselessness and poverty, and on and on and on. The presidential election is not the only one on the ballot just because it gets the most attention, and it isn't the only one that can be and is manipulated by the for-profit powers that be. That said, I want to kick off our conversation today by sharing an excerpt from a piece written by one of today's guests, Minister Matthew Johnson. And of course, I'll link to the full piece in the show notes for this episode, along with, as usual, the links to all of the little corners of the internet where you can find and follow our guests from today. Quote, "Shortly after Rayshard Brooks was murdered by Atlanta police officer Garrett Rolfe, I met a young activist that was only armed with a megaphone at a protest that was headed towards APD's 3rd Precinct. I gave him a respirator since the police liberally used tear gas during protests in those days, and told him that he could reach me if he ever needed support. We stayed in touch, and he asked me to come to Rayshard Brooks' funeral along with him. As we sat in Ebenezer Baptist Church and watched speaker after speaker give their respects and proceed through the program, the young activist looked over to me and said, 'Do you think they would have ever welcomed Rayshard here if he weren't killed by the police?' He understood the deep class divide that existed in Atlanta's most internationally known church, the spiritual home of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Such events were politically expedient, while Reverend Dr. Warnock was running for office as a progressive, but his critiques of police brutality and militarism faded as Senator Warnock settled into office. That young activist, named Antonio Lewis, that spoke boldly against police brutality and Cop City on the campaign trail, said nothing when he became Councilman Antonio Lewis. Garrett Rolfe, the officer that shot Rayshard Brooks in the back, received back pay, and was reinstated as an APD officer on his watch. Now Councilman Lewis spouts conspiracy theories about protesters sabotaging critical infrastructure as he supports Cop City, pads the pockets of police officers, and funds APF projects that further the surveillance of Black communities. While Warnock and Lewis claimed that they would change things from the inside, they are the ones who changed. Police killings across America, the murder rate in Atlanta, and the Atlanta police budget disproportionately were rising since 2020. Our communities are no safer, but Senator Warnock and Councilman Lewis gained notoriety. I expect little from politicians, especially without strong checks from community voices that hold politicians accountable to what they said they would do before they got in office. End quote. If you're new here, my name is Chelsea. I'm hosting this journey as a community social worker, activist, organizer, hellraiser, and folk witch calling in from the land historically stewarded by the Salagi people. I'm joined as your host by my co-host, friend, and fellow loudmouth Appalachian woman and aspiring attorney, Sierra. This is our friendly neighborhood podcast where we serve as your tour guides on this wild journey through time and space towards liberation, while we keep things anti-fascist, anti-capitalist, and anti-racist. We explore topics throughout Appalachian history and current events that connect the dots of the multiracial working class organizing movements that have always existed and continue to exist across these ancient mountains. By multiracial working class organizing, we mean mutual aid, civil disobedience and direct action, unionizing and labor organizing, policy and legislative reform, around issues of state violence, reproductive justice, wages and working conditions, accessible housing, harm reduction, healthcare, and, well, you get the idea. Today's episode is brought to you by our blood, sweat, and tears, along with, of course, the love of our community, Sierra's homemade bread recipe, and howling at the moon. As we get back into the swing of regular episode production, we are restructuring in a few ways. One of those ways is that we no longer include advertisements in our episodes. We also don't have any sponsors helping to keep this show alive, which means that, in all seriousness, this episode is actually brought to you by you and the patrons who support the show on our Ko-Fi/Coffee, however you say it, page, which is the alternative that we use to Patreon. You can find that page at ko-fi.com/rednexrising. Rednecks is plural. And if you like what you hear, you can support the show for as little as $1 a month. With that, let's dig into the good stuff. Today's episode is so good in so many ways, and it was such an incredible honor to be able to participate in this conversation, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. Here. Is this everybody?
Our quorum.
Perfect.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy. River's the one who pulled us all into this space, so I know River also is calling in from work today, but if you want to kind of kick us off with an introduction and pass it along from there.
I'll begin my introduction by going last and putting women and POC first.
Perfect.
So go ahead, y'all.
Hi, Matthew. Nice to see you. Hi, Kiana. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. It's a pleasure. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all. I guess I'll just start with my introduction. Good to see everybody. I'm Reverend Kiana Jones-Moore, a co-pastor at Park Avenue Baptist Church. Been in the movement to stop Cop City for quite a while. Came into contact with everyone here through the movement. Matthew specifically with the Faith Coalition, and our community hears one another. River specifically through just the streets. And Belkis I met for the very first time on the day of Manuel's memorial, and we have been in touch ever since. So it's definitely an honor and a privilege to be here with everybody to talk about the things that we do.
Yeah, well, my name is Belkis Teran, Belkisteran. I am now in Panama. I live in Panama, the Panama country, not the city, but the country, Panama. So very far away. I am, Manuel's mother. It's a long process until now. I'm very, very happy to help people, to share my knowledge, my love, my caring for people. And I'm still in mourning. We call mourning. So I'm very strong, but I'm still sensitive to many things. So I don't ignore. If I have to cry, I cry. Because I have faith, a lot of faith, but we as humans, we suffer too. So I let my feelings go away. No shame about that. So, but I'm strong. Most of the time, I have very good conversation, and I'm participating in a Stop Cop City, of course. I digo of course because I could change my point. No? I could say no, I'm not participating in that, but I do because it's a human thing to do. Because I love people no matter how different we are. As I said many times, I have my own culture, my own point of view. I'm heterosexual, but I respect everybody. It doesn't matter how they are, what they do, only if it's on three categories: consideration, respect, and appreciation. This is my philosophy of life: consideration, respect, and appreciation. Because if somebody is doing something for me, I have to appreciate that. If somebody needs my attention because it's crazy, it need my respect and consideration. So these are my principles to live. And I want to share because it's not easy. Not everybody has respect, and love is my power. So I like to share this power because many people doesn't know how to love because they're thinking that there is this romantic from the soap operas. So love is the most strong energy in the universe, the most powerful way to share things in the universe. So because love, everything is created. So with the Big Bang or no Big Bang, love is there connecting us. This is what connects us and make our civilization, our humanity go ahead and grow. So okay, I stop here because I'm always finishing preaching. Next one.
Hello, everybody. My name is Matthew. I am a minister and activist in the Atlanta area. I am chaplain in residence at Park Avenue. I have also been serving as executive director of Beloved Community Ministries, an organization that specifically focuses on supporting and resourcing local organizers and activists, especially Black and Indigenous folk. It's a pleasure to be on today.
I'm River Michael. Thanks everybody for being here and being exactly who you are. And if you're listening to this, thanks for listening and being exactly who you are. So I am a musician and primarily I'm an activist. And everything resolves around that. So, I mean, The music is about activism of all genres: folk, hip hop, reggae, metal. And then I'm also a teacher at Georgia State University and working on a PhD in political science and theory, specializing in alternative political institutions such as the Zapatistas, Rojava, and Democratic and Federalism, and really just all political ideologies, and then specializing in social movements like grassroots, as well as far-right extremism. So, yeah, and I VP a nonprofit called Mixed Deity Arts, which is, I mean, we're doing our best. But bottom line is we have a space, and we have a studio, and we put on all kinds of shows. But really, it's for the community, and it's open. If you're a member for like $15 a month, then you get full access to the space anytime you want. Nobody has to be there. You can log in and get the key to the on your phone. You know what I mean? And come in, use the footage. I mean, use the photo studio, the podcast, the studio, all these different studios, or just the whole building and parking lot, the party bus, all kinds of stuff like that. And yeah, we've helped out a lot of artists and activists, and we've been repressed for helping the movement, and had all of our stuff stolen from us with an illegal eviction from the cops that they're never going to take to court, and they know that we ain't got the money to do that, and they stole all our shit, but we still here. So yeah, that's what I do, and I film cops at all expenses and protect people if I can. So, got number 11 solidarity. Thanks for all.
I'm so grateful that y'all are here, and folks listening to this will know, but just so you know who you're talking to and have a little bit of context, my name is Chelsea, and I'm rooted in Western North Carolina. The closest city is Asheville. It's usually what I point folks to. So, a hop, skip 2.5 hours from Atlanta, and came across River through a mutual friend from back in the day when I used to go to Atlanta a lot more frequently. And my journey in community organizing comes from the lived experience of being extremely poor my whole life, growing up in Appalachia and kind of witnessing death by poverty in many different situations. And my view in community organizing comes actually from a social work view around centered in love and healing and somatic liberation, just as much as collective liberation, as opposed to what River brings to the table is more of that like political theory. And so I am not someone who is immersed in political theory. I am much more immersed in like lived experiences, and something that Bokis, as you were introducing yourself, that I just really appreciated as you spoke about like both your strength and making space for your grief and your mourning. Like I felt just so called to lift up that I don't think that those two are separate. I think that they rely on each other. And in the same way that love also is what allows us to feel such immense grief. And even though it feels so harrowing and suffocating at times, that grief, like it is coming from that place of love that allows us to work to prevent others from suffering in a way that would cause that grief to be experienced again. And I just appreciate you stepping into this work and making space for your full self, your full humanity, and your full experience that's brought you here and has brought you together with these incredible other humans. And one thing that I think really came to light for me recently was how little awareness there is of Cop City and what is happening outside of sort of this niche circle of activism and community organizing and folks who are kind of in the work, right? And or in that Atlanta space, I think directly. And it came to light because I was talking about the recent changes in the Democratic nominations for presidential candidates. And I was talking about Palestine, and someone who is a very well-meaning friend of mine, a couple of generations older, white woman, genuinely didn't understand what I was trying to convey in my message. And I brought up Cop City, and she just straight up was like, well, what's that? Like, what are you talking about? And it made me aware of like, oh my gosh, sometimes, although I work so hard to I consider myself a storyteller and like a weaver of these stories and trying bringing it to the folks who don't consider themselves politically active necessarily, so that we can all understand that the personal is political. And even in doing that, I am so insulated sometimes that I forget that like just the awareness of what is happening is so often missing from folks. And so if it's okay with y'all, whoever would like to kind of give that introduction to like what is Cop City? What's happening? Like for folks who might be out there who are like, well, what are y'all are all in this fight together? What are you fighting? Who might not know anything about the context of this.
Well, before we start with the Cop City, I wanna say that many people, when we said stop Cop City, we think in that we don't need any more somebody to protect or to take care of or keep us safe from the people that are doing bad. This is not the point. I believe that the community, very well organized, as in many places, it can be protected and caring by themselves. So more than Cop City itself, I'm thinking in a community building, in a community, how we can live in a community and take care of ourselves, educate ourselves, and give all the patterns to be free. Because we are talking here about freedom. You said Palestine, this and that, yes. But the base on all this is a community organized, a community that are aware what is going around in an environmental way, in a health way, education, love for families, protection of the properties or protection of their business. It doesn't need a system that is so aggressive. That's what I'm talking about. Cop City, this aggressive organization that is killing humans without without license, like in the movies, License to Kill. I mean, those things that are very popular in the movies, but it's happening in the society. Many people in these groups, jail, that are organized right now, jail, cops, and guards have license to kill. And this license to kill is that we want to stop. We don't want to stop their normal protection for a person in the real life, no. But the license to kill is that we want to stop. So if we call Stop Cop City, I will say stop killing people more than anything, you know. So this is anybody from Stop Cop City can talk about it. This is that's what I am. I get the sense, you know, when Manuel died, I said, yeah, these people are killing and killing and killing thousands and thousands of people around the United States with license, you know.
Yeah, I think that Matthew is a good person to talk about what Cop City is. And I think that would be a good introduction to what is Cop City and why are we here.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just give a quick synopsis. So Entrenchment Creek Park and the old Atlanta Prison Farm are two different areas that are juxtaposed to each other. The old Atlanta Prison Farm, it has ruins of this place where essentially a vast majority Black people were picked up for very petty crimes and forced to work the land and provide food for the rest of the Atlanta City jail system. And this was going on from the late 1800s, early 1900s, all the way up until the 1990s. That is already disturbing enough. But when you continue to look back at the history of this land, you find out that Entrenchment Creek Park and the old Atlanta Prison Farm were originally the lands of the Muskogee people. They lived on and worked on for many years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, perhaps, until a forcible removal by President Andrew Jackson about almost 200 years ago now, that forced the Muskogee people off the land and turned the land into a slave plantation. So if you're following, that means that this land went from indigenous land to slave plantation to prison farm, right? Now, the shift between the slave plantation and prison farm really wasn't that big of a shift at all, because in either case, it was black people being forced to work land that they didn't profit from. And so this land has had about 200 years of unjust toil on it, which I think that we should really focus on in terms of understanding what this land means in Atlanta now. So Atlanta has been doing a lot of redevelopment, et cetera. And as a part of the city's master plan, Entrenchment Creek Park and the old Atlanta prison farm was supposed to be a part of the One Atlanta vision. That would be a part of the city's master plan for parks. However, during this time, it was originally proposed in 2017-18 that instead you have this large police training facility on this land. And people rejected this proposal because this land was already committed to be a part of the city's master plan. 2020, you had the largest wave of anti-police protests in the history of the world. The largest, as a matter of fact, the largest protests in general in the history of the world, in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. And then in 2021, you see renewed interest and people being galvanized towards the development of this police training facility that we dubbed Cop City. Initially, they were calling it the Institute for Social Justice, and saying that this police training facility was in the, and I shit you not on this, they were saying that this was in the legacy of Martin Luther King and in pursuing justice. Now, they moved away from this point because it was crazy. But I promise you that the videos are still out there somewhere where they were saying that Cop City was an extension of the legacy of Martin Luther King.
I firmly remember that. And I was like, oh, bro, what?
I mean,
are you kidding me?
If we follow
you don't see statues of Fred Hampton. You know what I'm saying?
If we follow the line of thought that Martin Luther King was assassinated by the state, then like, kinda, yeah, it is carrying through on that legacy. But I don't think that that's what they intended with that narrative.
No, that's not what they meant. That's not what they meant.
That was punny.
And then so we end up in this fight after some grassroots researchers and organizers in Atlanta discovered that the land lease had been approved by the Atlanta City's mayor without even going through the approval of city council. Because of our advocacy, it was forced to be voted on by city council. I see some shocked faces, but I think that this project has been so unjust in so many ways, and there have been so many layers of lies and untruths, that whenever you start to go through the history, it can become jarring when you think about all the ways that they betrayed public trust in order to create this project. Right? And so I digress. So it's forced to a city council vote where there was a record amount of public content against the project. It was still the lease for this land was still voted for. At that point, there starts a essentially an occupation of the forest as a means of protesting the destruction of Entrenchment Creek Park, which is a public park that was going to be replaced with a sound stage. And now we can go into a lot of details about that, because this was also a project where it was initially supposed to be on a completely different piece of land, but the company Shadowbox Studios lied about doing the proper land assessments, excavated all the land, destroyed it, left us with nothing but a dirt mound, then found out that it was swampland that they couldn't develop. So they pitched a deal for them to instead take DeKalb County's park, Entrenchment Creek Park, to build their soundstage on. So essentially, to take the public's land because they lied about the land assessments that they did with the land that they had purchased. Right. So that is one half of the park. Now, the part that's most contentious, the Old Atlanta Prison Farm, is where they planned on building Cop City, and where you have an occupation on the Entrenchment Creek Park side of this land, as well as the Old Atlanta Prison Farm. And this occupation goes on for well over a year, with protesters and supporters of this movement coming from far and wide to make sure that it is as hard as possible for the state to go through and develop this completely unpopular project. Now, I know that I can get long-winded whenever I'm talking about the history of this, so let me fast forward. We were kind of in a holding pattern of obstruction of this project and certain rounds of arrest and raids by the local authorities. We had been in that, holding pattern for the past couple of years. Things really started to escalate in December of 2022, when the first arrests were made, where people were charged with domestic terrorism. This was a significant escalation.
Can I just drop something here real quick before I forget that? So just when you're saying that first raid, like I'm sure Chelsea will play it later. There's a song that I put out that Tortuguita was supposed to play harmonica on with me. And I was and it was a folk song, and then they had sent a message to me and a voice message a couple days after that, asking to go about a party that they'd missed because of the chaos. And that's, I had that snippet, and I ended up putting that on the song. So you can hear that, and you can hear the kind of fear and chaos and just like, but also bravery in somebody's voice when they're going through these kinds of things. And then specifically after that first raid. So I just thank you, and you're killing it, Matt.
I know exactly what song you're talking about, and that clip. Sorry. That just, just I don't know. It's been a hell of a couple years, but so from that point where essentially this is where everything becomes arbitrary. Because now we're dealing with the state essentially accusing people of whatever they can. So you have everything from people being pulled out of a parking lot of a park where they're legally allowed to be being charged with domestic terrorism. You have people that are being pulled nonviolently out of trees being charged with domestic terrorism. You have people that are being shot at with chemical weapons, tear gas, then pulled out of trees. And they're the ones that are considered domestic terrorists. So we see this escalation of the state. Nevertheless, we persisted. And where things, I think, really took a turn, where people started to really pay attention to what was happening here, was when Tortuguita was murdered by the state. We knew that they were lying from the beginning. The story never really added up, and they had changed it about 3 times within the first 2 hours, within the killing of Tortuguita. And because of the nature of the murder, we were in this very strange situation where we were mourning somebody and we didn't know exactly who was killed yet. Because that evening, we had a rally, but they had not officially given the death announcement for Tortuguita. So we were in this strange place where at the same time where you were relieved to see that certain people had survived, you were starting to winnow down who it was that still wasn't there, which I think is one of the absolute worst ways that people can ever have to grieve. But that's where we were.
That shit was horrible, man.
Yeah. And so
all the process has been very horrible for everybody.
Yeah. And but yeah, and I think this is when we got even more like national attention to the struggle. And once again, I might want to fast forward, but essentially what I still haven't really gotten at is that Cop City itself is a militarized police training facility that continues the pattern of hyper-militarization of the police, where resources that could otherwise go to investing in our community are instead investing in making the people that are supposed to protect us or keep us safe in some way are essentially being equipped as if they are an invading army in our communities. The same police force, the Atlanta Police Department, that will be training in Cop City also trains alongside the IDF, and they exchange crowd control tactics, which is something that I think often goes understated in our movement, that the exact same violence that's being used against Palestinians right now in a genocide are the same training tactics that local police receive from programs such as GILEAD, the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange, where Israeli officers come here to train and Atlanta officers go to Israel to train. And the way that it got the name Cop City in specific is because there is a mock city that is slated to be on this campus where the police will essentially be practicing military tactics to handle civilian situations. So this is why you've had so many activists give up so much in their own lives, and in some case now give up their own lives in order to stop this project. And we have continued fighting in different ways ever since.
Yeah, I also have a slide that I made, that PowerPoint slides that talk about GILEAD, because I gave a presentation at Georgia State where GILEAD is ran out of. It is ran out of the Andrew Young School for Policy Studies, right? Where you go and you learn about law and freedom. Fuck off, right? So what it really is this horrible atrocity that's been going on since the 90s, where police will go to the West Bank and train with these genocidal regime, which has been a genocidal regime for hundreds of years, right? And it's not quite 100. I'm sorry, I take it back, but it feels like it when you're watching children in pieces, you know. And it's like, but so they've been going there since the 90s and helping them to do that for their training, so they can come back here and do it here. Because guess who can't train the cops? The military. It's illegal, right? So, but guess who we do train? Guess who we do arm? The IDF. So it's this proxy thing, because these proxies are around the world. You understand? By the way, I left out something. I was in the 3rd Ranger Battalion in the 75th Ranger Regiment in Special Operations. And I'm not going to talk about it much. I have no whatever. I respect the people. Sometimes I have friends who are still in, and if you're in the Special Operations, you can do good things to bad people, and like the Islamic State, who are nothing but far right extremists, Islamic neo-Nazis, right? And so, I mean, I have respect for people that are still in, as long as they're radically anti-transphobic and radically sexually equal and based on equity, and they call these things out. And I never saw that much racism or anything in the Special Operations. It's definitely in the big army, but people are there really just trying to, because they're warriors, and they're trying to, and it's just what they are, and they want to help, but you can't always help. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're working for the U.S. government, they put you in horrible situations. So that's why I got out on disability. But at the same time, I mean, like, I'm sorry, I'm kind of ranting on that one, but the bottom line is I understand a lot about these proxies, and I understand a lot about Rojava, especially as somebody who studies it and is writing a book about it, and the autonomous administration of North and East Syria and the fight against the Islamic State, and what that has done for proxy warfare, and what that has done, and what the Arab Spring has done for proxy warfare and for asymmetrical warfare, right? And how and what it's really done to push all governments, including the United States, back into being open theocracies, because they all are theocracies, let's be real, for the most part. And it's pushing them back into being open theocracies because they can use the populism to gain that speed, and that's called fascism, my friends. So that's what's happening, and I've seen it happen in other states. I study it in other states and the rise of it. You understand? So and that's what's happening here. It's what's been happening here for a long time.
I was just about to say,
here.
Yeah, the populism
it's been fascism.
Yeah.
It's been dormant fascism.
The populism to theocratic fascism, especially in poor rural white communities, is it's here and across the world, and it's absolutely a tool of racial capitalism to uphold these power structures that we have. And I appreciate that perspective and the experience that you bring to the conversation. Kiana, is there anything that you wanted to speak to following Matthew's phenomenal summary of the situation in Atlanta?
Yeah, absolutely. What I will say is that I come into the movement as a person who is from that area where they want to build Cop City, where most of my adult relatives have matriculated through McNair Senior High School, which used to be Walker High School, which is right there across from the land that was given to Ryan Millsap illegally, but also a stone's throw away from where they want to build Cop City and also Entrenchment Creek Park. What is really important for people to understand is that in the history that Matthew explained, the land has never been used for the benefit of the community ever since it was stolen from Muskogee people and they were run away in the Indian Removal Act. Ever since then, whenever the city of Atlanta has come to that part of the city of Atlanta that is also unincorporated DeKalb County, all they have ever done is bring oppression, repression, and slavery through policing. And it's really important for people to understand that although that land lies within the city of Atlanta, technically, officially, and legally, it is governed by DeKalb County as it is annexed into unincorporated DeKalb County. So when you're hearing people talk about an illegal land swap and zoning laws not being adhered to, and you're hearing DeKalb County, and you're saying, but wait, I thought the city of Atlanta owned this, and what's going on here? It's a mess. It's a big mess. But over the years, there have been many efforts just to streamline, to help people understand where ownership of that land truly lies. Whose land is it really? We know that indelibly it is indigenous people's land. However, when we're talking about these laws that have shaped ownership over the years and through the decades of this particular tract of land, it is officially within the ownership of DeKalb County. So the Atlanta Police Foundation and the city of Atlanta had to go to DeKalb County to acquire this land. DeKalb County did not do its due diligence. And I think that it's important to highlight one thing that Matthew said in the introduction, wherein we have seen that so many laws have been circumvented in order for this project to go forward. We can go all the way back to February of 2023 when Amy Taylor filed the first lawsuit based upon the legality of the land disturbance permit that was given to not only the Atlanta Police Department Atlanta Police Foundation and City of Atlanta, but also challenging the land disturbance permit that was just given to Ryan Millsap, as Matthew mentioned, illegally. The Atlanta Police Foundation refused to comply with the zoning appeal, which was a violation of DeKalb County law when that lawsuit was filed. Even though they were this was an appeal of the zoning permit that allowed the Atlanta Police Foundation to begin building, or in that stage where they were in, cutting down the trees. During the appeals process, under DeKalb County law, you are not supposed to touch that land. You have to wait until the appeal is decided. But Dave Wilkinson, president of the Atlanta Police Foundation, made it very clear in documented emails that they were moving, quote unquote, full speed ahead with the project. So here's one violation of law. Was Dave Wilkinson or the Atlanta Police Foundation or City of Atlanta reprimanded for that? No. There were numerous appeals to the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. They were appealed to based on environmental laws. And a lot of people are like, well, what in the world does the environment have to do with this? Well, if you can't see that the destruction of 381 acres of forest land is an environmental issue, we can just talk about the environmental racism that's been inflicted upon the people in that area ever since I can remember. I am 44 years old and I was born and raised there. And I remember when there were landfills that were in that area, active landfills, and I remember the smell of the landfills. I remember all of the mitigation that had to go into making sure that the drinking water was clean, everything that had to be done for just that pollution of the air with the landfills alone, but also that firing range that is in operation on the land where they want to build Cop City. Ever since the initial training facility was built there, because after the prison farm, here comes the Atlanta Police Department again. We're building a whole training facility over there. I have a relative that trained at that very training facility, but it got closed down in the 90s. But what didn't they close? The firing range, because they thought that it was okay for Black families living in that area to hear constant gunfire. And that firing range is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never closes. You can stand on the property at McNair Senior High School at 12 p.m. in the afternoon and hear gunfire. You can stand on the corner at 6 a.m. and hear gunfire. You can stand there at midnight and hear gunfire because this firing range is always open. But also because of the constant construction that has been done in that area, the roads, the infrastructure is crumbling there. But this provides another level of pollution because not only are you breaking down our roads, and all of this stuff gets to run into Entrenchment Creek, which feeds into the South River, which is the headwater of the Altamaha, which is the largest body of water in the state of Georgia. Like, we have all of these things going into the water. We have a lot of things going into the air because, of course, you have the pollution from the construction. When you cut down these trees, and what else is happening when you're mixing concrete and then you're paving and then you're looking for certain types of soil and all the testing that you have to do for that. There's a lot of chemical that's going into our drinking water and also into the air here. The rate of asthma in that area is higher than other places in the city of Atlanta because of the constant environmental pollution that's been going on. So when you think about this area that has not been totally gripped by gentrification yet, it's situated in East Atlanta, and East Atlanta has been undergoing the process of gentrification for about the last 15 years now. And Gresham Park, that area, has not yet gotten to the level of gentrification that the other part of East Atlanta is, but it is slowly moving that way. But because this particular area is still heavily Black, many of the families there are old families, like they have been there 20 years plus. The city of Atlanta does not value these residents, and the county of DeKalb is more than happy to ignore them as well, because from the time I was a little girl, neither the city of Atlanta nor the county of DeKalb provided any type of substantive redevelopment for the area. If you go right on the other side of Cop City near Constitution Road and go down Boulder Crest, there's a plaza there that looks the same today as it did in 1995. And that is not an exaggeration. There has always been some type of iteration of a very small grocery store that's not very well stocked. There is a Family Dollar that has survived for quite some time, a Domino's Pizza, a beauty supply, and there's a Hardee's on the corner. The city of Atlanta nor the county of DeKalb have made any type of investment in this area other than to bring policing. And what we see right now, when we talk about the intersection of social justice and environmental justice and knowing that they are one and the same, Militarization of police is the biggest threat to the environment that we have right now. As we see our local police departments being armed to the teeth with military surplus, that also brings pollution to our environment. That brings the deterioration of the natural habitats in which we have become accustomed to living, but also it takes away from nurturing resources for the community. In the example of that plaza, while the city of Atlanta was coming to build this militarized police training facility, they could have also put a grocery store, a viable grocery store in the area. That area is technically
Aldi.
a food desert, but in a place that is already bereft of food, clean water, fresh air, you bring a militarized police training facility to further oppress the people. And this is systemic and systematic. This is what we see in minority communities across the country, where you're going to make sure to starve the people of resources needed to thrive, but you're going to oversaturate them in policing and surveillance. With Operation Shield, through the help of Motorola and the Atlanta Police Foundation, Atlanta is now the most surveilled city per capita in the United States. You are really, it's rare that you will walk in any 2-block direction in the city of Atlanta without seeing a sign that says City of Atlanta Police Department camera in the area, or even seeing the cameras. And it's really insidious that this is done primarily in majority Black neighborhoods, but also the way they use the cameras, they really don't benefit the community at all. It's a false sense of community safety, right? I have a cousin who was murdered right on the corner of Metropolitan Avenue and University Avenue in the city of Atlanta. That's a very popular intersection. There are those City of Atlanta Police Department cameras in that area. Do you think my cousin's murderer has been apprehended? No. But I guarantee you that if someone robbed any of the stores on any one of those 4 corners, there would be no problem apprehending them, because those cameras would be used straight away. The city of Atlanta, the police foundation, the police department have really done a lot of work on a propaganda campaign to scare residents into believing that we are so crime ridden and that public safety has to be at the forefront. So we have to put all of this money into policing. But when we're talking about public safety, policing is the number one thing that does not keep us safe. Policing is the number one thing that threatens us. When you can murder a 63-year-old deacon for simply refusing to sign a parking ticket, where's the public safety? When you can murder someone who is sitting with their hands raised in a non-threatening position, where's the public safety in that? And what we see is that the fear is taking away the attention of the people from their basic needs. People are forgetting that there are a lot of houseless people on the street, many of whom have mental health issues, but we have no mental health infrastructure in the state of Georgia, particularly in the city of Atlanta and in DeKalb County. People are forgetting that there is a crisis of healthy food that's available to us, but instead they'd rather see, oh yes, more money go to policing. Oh yeah, the officers, they need better training. We need them over here. And it's a really, really bad mind trick that they do on Black people, because they get us into this sort of thinking of, okay, well, we're the good ones and we need the cops to protect us from the bad ones. Like, we don't need the riffraff and those other Black people coming into our neighborhoods and causing trouble. So yes, we need the police. We want them to have better training, give them more guns. But then when you think about it, you're giving the police more guns, but what's being done for your public library? What's being given to education for your children? What's being given as far as health care in community? We want to build Cop City in Atlanta, but we have had 2 major hospitals shut down in the past 2 years, both of them in majority Black communities. If we don't see the ploy here, then we have got to be willfully ignorant, and that is an issue. If you can't see that the city of Atlanta and other places in this country are building cop cities, but they're closing hospitals. They're taking away schools and moving more and more toward privatization of education. They're moving to privatization of healthcare, privatization of the things that we need in communities for our loved ones and relatives to thrive, right? For Black communities to really be able to get a leg up. If people aren't healthy, if people don't have an education, if people don't have access to food, clean water, and fresh air, if people don't have access to jobs, then how will they ever thrive? But what we see through Cop City is that there's a concerted effort to perpetuate the very conditions in which we live currently that continue to keep us down. So when you talk about Cop City, you can't talk about it without talking about the lack of health care, the lack of educational resources, the lack of food infrastructure, the lack of mental health care. And we can't talk about Cop City if we are not talking about environmental justice, if we're not talking about economic justice, because when you think about it, what revenue is Cop City bringing into the community? Who's getting a job at Cop City? Who from the community is going to benefit from Cop City? And if we're talking about these things, then we have to talk about reproductive justice, because when we look at the tenets of reproductive justice, one of the tenets of reproductive justice is the ability to raise the children that we choose to have in safe, healthy environments, free of state-sanctioned and interpersonal violence. When we look at the proliferation of these Cop cities, all we see is, one, the justification of racial profiling, justification of over surveillance, and thereby the continued oppression of Black communities, because there will not be anywhere that we can go where we are not surveilled or taunted by police. This is a really systemic issue and systematic issue that we have to continue to fight against. So for me, it's not just because that's the area where I grew up. And yes, I care about that community, and I lived there until last year with my family. So I heard those gunshots 24/7. My children were hitting the floor when they heard gunshots. My husband and I first thought when we moved back to the neighborhood that, like, there's just stuff going on in the community and people are shooting at each other and this is a little crazy, until one of our neighbors told us, like, nah, that firing range is still open.
Yep.
And we were just like, no, they closed it down in the 90s. The neighbor was like, no, I'm telling you, they closed the training facility, but the firing range is still open. And when we look at right now, this is August, back to school in full effect, right? There's so much talk about reading levels and the underachieving of Black students in school. Well, let's look at the standardized testing, and let's look at the things that contribute to success in standardized testing. One of them being the ability to concentrate and think critically. How are you concentrating with gunfire constantly going off in the background? And if you're a child who comes from the traumatic experience of having seen, heard, or had a loved one who has been impacted by gun violence, what is that doing to you, and how can you think? And are you concentrating? But combine that with the fact that you're living in a food desert, and almost 70% of children in majority minority schools are food insecure anyway. If your stomach is growling and you're hungry, but there was no store for you to stop at on the way to school to grab a snack, what else are you going to do, right? How are you going to perform well on this standardized test? I think it's supposed to be that way. Yep. And think about the fact that from the time our children are starting kindergarten, they are encountering police in their schools. It's not just outside. We are giving a message to Black children that they are never seen as innocent, because they're walking down the streets and being surveilled by cameras. And then they're getting into a school building where there's cameras everywhere and people with guns who are there to make them behave. Mm-hmm. What message are we sending to our children? And when you think about that, think about the fact that Black children in America are never seen as innocent. Palestinian children are never seen as innocent. This is the reason why Black mothers and Palestinian mothers have so much in common, why we have to stand together, why we can't say stop Cop City without saying free Palestine, or vice versa. When we think about the oppression and the genocide in the global South, why everybody is now coming around to see that these struggles are connected. I can't separate myself from Palestine any more than I can separate myself from Sudan. I can't separate myself from Congo, because the same way Republicans in the White House are now trying to roll back child labor laws, there are children in the Congo being forced into labor so that I can have a flipping smartphone. That's insane. But the root of it all is American imperialism and racialized extractive colonialism. When we come around and understand that the reason why any of us struggle is because there has to exist a system in the mind of white supremacists where there is a 1% and the 99%. And the 1% is willing to do whatever it can to make sure that the 99% can never cross over. That there always has to be oppression. We got to feed capitalism, but capitalism doesn't run without slavery. Capitalism does not run without unfair incarceration of people, without prison labor. People are so caught up in this election, and it's really crazy right now. But when people say, I don't care about the election, like, I care about what's happening around the world. I care about the fact that there's a global genocide happening, and that there have been so many confirmations that it is in fact a genocide, that Israel is in fact an apartheid state, and we just gonna sit here and be like, okay, let's keep giving them money. Let's keep making sure that they got free healthcare and free college, and our children over here are struggling. Let's make sure that they can go and steal people's homes without consequence. And we have an extremely severe crisis of houselessness here. If people can't see that these struggles are interconnected, that they are inextricably linked, then again, people have gone into a state of cognitive dissonance that I don't know if they can come back from, because they are deliberately choosing not to believe the truth. So this struggle against Cop City encompasses so many people, because there are so many components. So when they say, oh my goodness, it's a lot of them, it's people in New York saying stop Cop City. There's people in Washington State saying stop Cop City. There's people in Italy saying stop Cop City. That's right. We have to, because we have to help people understand that this is a global struggle. Atlanta happens to be ground zero for the fight against Cop City. However, this is a global struggle that links all of us together, because if you are not in the 1%, then you are one of us. And if you're not fighting with us, then you are allowing yourself to be used for the purpose of extractive colonialism. And until you see that you are just being used and you're a pawn on this chessboard, then you're going to continue to spin your wheels trying to figure out how you're going to dismantle something in a system that was built to undermine you. You can keep doing that, but I would rather take my chances in the streets with the people who are revolutionaries and know that the empire is going to fall at some point, and try to make sure that we have things in place for our people when that day finally comes.
Woo! The Reverend taking us to church this morning. And River, before you hop in, I want to return to exactly like what you were saying about the fear that they create, distracting people and making people forget. And this is where, like, I'm so grateful that I ended up studying trauma and social work, because what I have come to learn actually through my organizing work more than anything else is that trauma is their ultimate weapon. And they are constantly hijacking our nervous systems by keeping us in a state of trauma. When I came into the sphere of community organizing, I was, again, super poor, grew up, and I was raised apolitical. Like, I didn't know the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And so when I came into political awareness, it was through this big D establishment Democratic Party. And when Trump won, call me naive in 2016, but I was very like, oh my God, how did my community here in rural Appalachia vote for Trump? What is happening here? They raised me with these good values. And I ended up knocking on hundreds of doors and talking to people, just asking them what gives and having conversations. And it always came back to exactly what you were describing in the mindset of your own community. And we are one of the good ones. We have to have someone that we can put our thumb down on so that we can climb a little bit higher in this hierarchy. And I am suffering and I need someone to point the finger at. And so this is who I'm being told I can point the finger at: poor brown people, poor Black people, etc. And then
Antifa.
Exactly. And so suddenly it became so clear of like, oh, Our living conditions are intended to traumatize us and to keep us from being able to survive, so that we are constantly actually just working to reinforce the systems that are killing us and oppressing us. And when you were describing like it's all connected and none of it can be extracted, similarly on my journey, I eventually came to that conclusion when I mean, the militarization of our economy is the new industrialization. Here in Appalachia, they just shut down, literally in my town, there used to be this huge paper mill, the number one employer of the town, shut down mysteriously for no important, no legitimate reason. And meanwhile, Pratt and Whitney is building a Raytheon plant right on the edge of the Blue Ridge Parkway off of Biltmore that a fully democratic county commission of Buncombe County, which is where Asheville is, the so-called like liberal mecca of Western North Carolina, they approved to give our local tax dollars to Pratt and Whitney to build this plant so that all of the poor white folks who need a job to pay their bills and put food on the table have nowhere else to go work now except to go make the fucking warplanes that are going to go drop the bombs on the Palestinians, right? And so it's like exactly what you're saying, from Cop City to Appalachia to the Mountain Valley Pipeline to Palestine to the Congo. We literally cannot fucking separate any of it because it's all intended to keep us just playing back in to the system. Thank you so much for your words, because that was
yeah. Thank you. Yes, I like to add something else, is that this is all the bad things that they are doing, but when we try to do good things, like making food available for poor people or making houses with the little resources that the community has, they criminalize that. They make people to pay fees because they are breaking the law. Yeah. I mean, this was something that in my head, I still cannot understand. You are criminalized because you are feeding poor people that doesn't have resources, people that doesn't have anything. When you try to help them, you are criminalized. Mm-hmm. So what they want is like we have an expression in Venezuela. I'm from Venezuela. The tiger eat me. I mean, let the tiger eat me, because there is no way to go. They don't want help, but they don't want that we help, because if somebody comes to help, they are outsiders. And there is such a war about criminalizing poor people and killing poor people. So this is something that has to be stopped, because this is happening in the whole United States and growing around the world.
And it goes I was just going to say, it goes back to what you said at the beginning of this sort of introducing Stop Cop City in general, about how Stop Cop City isn't about stopping our communities from being protected from harm. Like, we're not trying to stop that. It's about stopping these laws and these forces and these structures that were never actually intended to protect us or serve us in the first place. And that false sense of community security and safety that you mentioned, Kiana, where it's like, actually what we know about law enforcement is that it was intended always to protect the profit structures and the 1%. And so trying to do anything that threatens profit, that threatens the structures, that is actually the crime under the system that they've set up.
Absolutely. I think that people are always really thrown off when they come to the realization that there is no law that says that police are to protect and serve. There is not. They uphold the laws that are put in place in localities depending on where the police department is, whether it's a state police department, a county police department, a municipal police department, a federal police department. They are there to enforce those laws that are on the books. And when we think about the history of policing here in the United States, we cannot separate that from the United States' obsession with slavery. The very fact that you so-called emancipated the people who you enslaved, but then you wanted to go and put the slave patrol in place to make sure that you could as slavery was still going on so that you could catch fugitive slaves. But then when slavery was supposedly ended, you wanted to make sure that you could still police them and enslave them again, because you created the 13th Amendment to ensure that slavery will always exist, but by another name, and that you would once again have a way to scare people into thinking that slavery is essential. And once people are in prison, then they are relegated again to slave labor, because we have people working in prison for no wages or very low wages, and the money that they do earn will be taken away if they simply buy a tube of deodorant in the commissary. You know, it's always to keep us in this state of slavery, and by extension, indentured servitude, as the rest of us are, who are trying to live under capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
The system of policing has always been so that property owners, who were never intended to be Black people, property owners could have their properties protected. And when we look at the way policing operates today, even in the context of the movement to stop Cop City, protesting, and property damage, you hear this abuse of the word violence as it relates to property damage. You don't have, and when I say you, I mean the state, does not have one shred of evidence where there has been a person injured as a result of a protest to stop Cop City. What you do have is the allegation of Stop Cop City protesters setting things on fire or otherwise damaging property, but there has not been a single person who has been physically injured, not even a cop, as a result of a protest to stop Cop City. These things, however, are erroneously labeled as violence, and you will see the headlines, violent protesters. That's where the propaganda comes in and takes over. That's where you see the concerted effort in mainstream media. And they are loath to tell the truth. They don't want to tell the truth when it comes down to many of the actions that they report to community when it comes down to the movement to stop Cop City. When there was a massive action in November of 2023 called Block Cop City, you saw pictures of protesters and police officers like face to face in a standoff. But what you also saw, if you were able to see any of the videos that were collected, was officers putting their hands on protesters first, officers pushing, officers deploying tear gas, officers deploying pepper ball bullets, whatever it was, officers making the contact first. But then you'll read a headline that will say, violent riot by Stop Cop City protesters. When you look at the fact that in the RICO indictment, the date of the RICO indictment is the date of George Floyd's murder, the state is beginning to tell on itself in a very real way. The state, by virtue of that RICO indictment, admitted that they have felt threatened by people standing up for justice ever since the day that George Floyd was murdered, because on that day and subsequently, we saw a move of the people for social justice like we have not seen before, and particularly against police murder and police terror. But this is something that the establishment needs to keep in place in order for capitalism to run the way it does. So from that date, the state has been threatened by this movement, the movement, right, overall. But also in that RICO indictment, it's very telling that the words mutual aid and solidarity are used to criminalize people. What is mutual aid? What is solidarity? The state has basically told us that they want it to be a crime, that we find alternative systems in which to operate without them, outside of the current infrastructure and governmental structure that we have. The state finds it criminal for you to have an alternative. The state finds it criminal for you to help each other and lean on each other rather than them, because otherwise they can't keep you enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
When you have no dependence on the system, there is no slavery, right? So this is what is criminal. And the RICO indictment shows that. But when you look at this RICO indictment, this is one more piece of legal fodder that has been thrown into the works to try to stop and hinder the movement. But every time the movement comes back with a legitimate piece of legal, like something legal. When I say legal, I mean a lawsuit. I mean an injunction. I mean an appeal. Like any piece of legal paperwork that we get moving within these courts, it is shut down. Whether it is a very valid appeal to the EPA for the silt runoff content that's in the water for violation of the Clean Water Act, which has been proven, and the EPA shuts it down. Whether we go to the DeKalb County water, what is it? The Water and Soil Conservation District, Water and Soil Conservation District of DeKalb County. And they totally ignore things and refuse to say anything to the DeKalb Planning and Zoning boards about what's happening. Whether we file an appeal to a land disturbance permit and construction is allowed to go on through that appeal, or whether we file a lawsuit that would allow people to vote on Cop City, everywhere we turn in the courts, we see that they want to shut us down. And everything that we have offered is valid in the court system. When we decided to go the route of a referendum to let the people decide, the city of Atlanta's mayor was all for it because he didn't think we were smart enough to be able to do it. But when we actually did it, including myself and other neighbors in DeKalb County having to go to court to file a lawsuit so that people in DeKalb County could collect signatures for that referendum petition, the mayor then wanted to fight that lawsuit. He appealed the initial injunction that we were given that allowed people to simply collect signatures, right? And gave us an extension of the time to collect the signatures based on the city of Atlanta's very ambiguous and oppressive statute, their ordinance regarding referenda. But every step of the way, we have been fought when there have been valid arguments. To this day, we have yet to get a decision from the 11th Circuit based on the lawsuit that myself and neighbors filed regarding the referendum petition. We have gone to City Hall to advocate. We have asked the City Council to put this on a ballot because the City Council can, without the blessing of the mayor, decide that the question of whether Cop City should be built can go on a ballot. We have seen our elected officials decide that they will not do that because, one, they're afraid of the mayor. I really don't know who this guy is. I don't know, like, if he has people that are waiting to hobble you or if people have turned up in the river or something if they go against him. I don't know what it is that makes the people afraid of him because I've seen him and he looks like a weasel. He is a liar. He has no backbone. He will never stand face to face with me or anybody else, honestly, to tell you the truth. Anyone who is going to tell him the truth about Cop City, anyone who's going to call him out for his lack of leadership and his willingness to contribute to the old ways of white supremacy, he's not going to engage with us. We know that. But I'm just wondering what it is that makes these people so afraid of him that they won't do the right thing, that they won't listen to their own constituents who call for something, but they are willing to go along with the mayor. I'm really interested in that. But I'm also interested in how the mayor plans to move this city forward in the wake of Cop City already being so far over budget. Passing the largest budget in the history of the city of Atlanta with 1/3 going to policing, even though the mayor and the Atlanta Police Foundation claim that the construction is so far along. We know that those are lies. People have seen where the construction is. It is not as far along as they claim. But also, you're taking money from taxpayers and already being over budget on Cop City. And this is just whatever phase they're in now. That means more money coming from the citizens, the residents of the city of Atlanta. This mayor is proving that he is willing to bleed the residents dry for a vanity project. And I'm wondering how he's going to reconcile that with the fact that we still have this crisis of homelessness, that we still have an issue where developers have basically taken over the city and are able to throw people out on the street for nothing, and we don't hold them accountable for it. I wonder how he can reconcile the fact that the city of Atlanta had to send back over $1 million to the federal government in COVID relief funds because they did not use it for housing as they were supposed to, but you're taking taxpayer dollars to build Cop City. How are you going to reconcile that with the number of food deserts that you have in the city of Atlanta, but you want to build Cop City? It's really baffling to so many people that Atlanta is supposedly the Black Mecca, but Atlanta has the highest wealth gap in this country. It's baffling that Atlanta is supposed to be the Black Mecca, but the Black mayor wants to put a Cop City in the middle of a Black neighborhood. It's mind-boggling. And
I
what
like
the
to add,
Mhm.
I like to add a word: corruption. Corruption that is in the system, in the whole system, corruption in the whole world. We can see around corruption in Israel against the Hamas, corruption against Congo, corruption in Haiti, corruption now in Venezuela. If you are following the Venezuelan voting, how is possible 80% or 73% of the votes in favor of the opposition, and still that guy, that man, doesn't want to go away? And only if international comes, if they come, because you don't find help in the international organization. I mean, it's amazing how the corruption is covering everything. And everybody that is in the power position, they can corrupt and they can kill, they can rob, they can destroy, they can close their eyes against anything, you know. And these have to be stopped. These have to be stopped for the ground people, from the poor and the educated people on the ground. Because we are now becoming in a moment, in a history moment, that as a human, as a civilization, we have to continue. We have to stop and make all those people that are slavering us in different ways, are slavering us. The big companies, you cannot buy food if it's not in the big chain supermarket. You cannot buy a piece of wood if not in the big Home Depot or whatever. You cannot buy petrol if it's not in those chains. You cannot have a telephone service if not in those big companies. So they are becoming rich using us. They are rich using us. Billionaires people, trillionaires people using us. And we are doing that because we follow the wave. Well, okay. And we allow us to accept the advertisements and this, and we don't want to cook anymore. We go to the restaurant, and the cheaper, because you cannot go to the fancy restaurant, you go to the cheap restaurant. So bad food, bad education, bad everything, and you are a slave. Because you, with your money, you are doing things that you don't want to do. They are slavering with your money too. So we have to awake. We have to awake all those things. I really want to go. Gotta go. So
you have a class to go to, right?
Love you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Belkis. Oh, I would love to chat with you more at some point in the future. We'll be in touch.
Yes, of course. Any moment. You just you have to give me a date or appointment, because sometime in the Tortuguita Healing Center, which I want to talk about it, but there is
I'll tell
no.
them about it too.
Huh?
I'll tell
Sorry?
them about it too. I'll
Yeah.
tell them about it. I'll talk about it. If you got to go.
I wanna, yeah, talk about the Tortuguita Healing Center, and over there is no internet right now. But yes, if you contact me, I can be here in my apartment, and with Wanda, that is around. So, but I gotta go. I gotta go to the school. I'm taking courses. So I really love the time with you, yeah,
Thank
keep
you so
going,
much.
keep going, because really, well, what I want to say, the Tortuguita Healing Center for me is my way how I can give people hope and continue Manuel's legacy, my son's legacy. This is what I'm doing, because when I do that, I feel that I'm doing something for people. It doesn't mean that it's mine. The Tortuguita Healing Center is not my property. It's for everybody to share, to do things. I like to organize more and more, and every time we are doing more organization. But the idea is that we can make people awake your sense about what is going around, awake yourself, and come back to nature, So, well, love you very much, and
Much
I gotta
love.
go. I'm sorry.
Tell the fam I said hey.
We'll talk to you
Sorry?
soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Bye.
She is fantastic and powerhouse of a person, and very strong and charismatic and loving and intelligent. And I appreciate her immensely. As well as Tortuguita and everybody that's here. So I will make this quick. I just had I have just a couple things I have to bring up because they have to go before an audience. So let's see. So there was, I don't live by the forest anymore. I live in like the southwest side ish, but it's still not far. But I used to live by the forest. And when I could hear all those gunshots all the time that Kiana was talking about. And I heard that morning I was doing an interview because the night before, the morning of January 18th, the morning Tortuguita was murdered and assassinated, I was doing an interview with somebody. I'm sorry. The night before, I was at the community meeting at Gresham Park, and I brought it up and I spoke about it, but I had my babe. I had to leave. So I spoke up and I said, hey, just want to let everybody know I'm studying political science, teach Georgia State, and I'm just trying to, veteran, I'm just trying to let everybody know that what they're doing here is worse than occupation overseas. It's the same exact thing. They have Bradleys and Strikers, and they will come and kill everybody that's around, and they don't even know how to do Battle Drill 6. You know what I mean? The feds will come and blow the front of your house off. I got footage of it yesterday, and then they chased me through the woods for catching them on footage. It wasn't even my house. It was some Airbnb. But they had me chasing me with drones and shit. And I'm like, trying to hide and shit. I'm terrified for my fucking life because I killed my friend like that. You know what I mean? That shit is scary as fuck. And that's not shit, because that is what every single activist who was out there at the music festival went through. That is what Tortuguita went through. And these people don't have the training in the mindset that I have. They don't have that capacity and ability to just be like, all right, let's go. You know what I'm saying? And didn't go to Ranger school. You know what I'm saying? Like that. And it's mind fucking boggling, quite frankly. And sorry I had to say that one. Yes, fuck the police. And that more. So that I did an interview. So after that, so somebody came up to me and was like, hey, I'm with University of Tennessee and I'm doing an interview. Can I get an interview on you? Because I'm down here researching social movements, sociology, and specifically Cop City. And I was like, he's like, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'm like, shit, I'm supposed to go meet my homie at a public park in the morning. It's open to the public. Weelaunee People's Park, or otherwise known as, in its colonizer form, Entrenchment Creek Park. So there's, I was supposed to be there, and I was like, actually, hold up, I'm gonna do this interview, and I was supposed to go meet Tort, and we're gonna move water, and we're gonna do the song with the harmonica. I had a harmonica ready, you know what I mean? I had a fuck Nazis patch that I was supposed to give them, that they wanted off my vest, and we're about to wrap it up, and I start getting messages. There's shit going on here. There's crazy shit going on. Cops are doing raid. I don't know what to do right now, but I gotta go. Boom, and it was like, and it was three. I no weapons. It was 3 shotgun fires with pellet balls, and then it was a ton of fucking AR. That's what it was. It was 5.56. And there's without a single one of these anywhere in there. Anywhere. There wasn't a single handgun shot. And you to sit here and tell me that when there's no gunshot residue on the hands, and when there's holes in somebody's hands, and there's no blood on the gun, and there's no damage to the gun, and the gun was that specific gun has a thing on the top that raises if it's loaded, and it has one in the chamber, right? Or no, it has a magazine in that's loaded. There's a thing that raises, right? It wasn't raised in the picture. There was a magazine in there. The magazine was empty, but the slide wasn't back. So if Tortuguita emptied that fucking gun and then put the slide forward after being shot in the head, come the fuck on. With no gunshot residue, y'all fucking drop that gun just like motherfuckers do in Afghanistan. I brought it on target with you and you dropped it. Or even if it was their gun. It might have been. And honestly, I don't give a fuck what Tort did. I'll power you too, because the motherfucker's going to probably kill you anyway. And it's people have to understand that there is a thing called fascism. And it doesn't matter what fucking color you are. We see that in fucking, and we see that with people who are of Jewish descent that just went through a Holocaust less than 100 fucking years ago, doing the same goddamn thing to people right there. And you're going to sit here and tell me that the police can't do it because they're different colors? No. This is the state. It's a thing called the state, right? Go read Murray Bookchin. Go read David Graeber. Go read Noam Chomsky. Read a fucking book by one of the most cited scholars in the world, right? And educate yourself about real forms of repression that are hierarchical. And that is what oppression is. And mutual aid is the revolution. You don't need to go take over anything. You don't need to go fight anybody, but self-defense is important, you know? And that's just really the life we live in. Film the police, but don't do it if you have something to lose. Do it if you're fucking a white man. You know what I mean? Like, be fucking brave if you can, if you have to. Don't let this shit take over your mentality, because if it does, and it will, if some people have to do it. Some people have to continue being an activist. I've never broken a law. I've defended people and myself, but mostly other people, and then having to defend myself from defending other people. And that's not cops are like, good job, bro, with the mask on. It's like, yeah, okay, fuck you. Why don't you do your job? You know what I mean? And these are the realities of the world that we live in. And just to see an occupation. Oh, and I also wanted to shout out and say, we talk about the genocide in Congo and in Sudan and in Palestine, and those are so fucking horrible and important, but it's also important to realize that the same exact thing is happening from Turkey and Erdogan towards the Kurdish people, and from in Iran, and from even Iraq, and even Kurdish Iraq is being attacked right now by Turkey, and Turkey is using the Islamic State as their proxy, right? And because to fight the people that were our main allies they beat the Islamic State, the Kurds, right? Not us. We just taught them how to do it. A bunch of women with guns went and did it, and they liberated themselves. And they have the most efficacious democracy in human history, statistically. And now they're our proxy, and that's the only reason we could give them planes, we could give them anti-air guns, but we don't, because they are our proxy, and we're using them as our slaves. And they have the biggest ISIS prison there, and you know what I mean. And one day, and Turkey is shooting bombs at that prison every fucking day, trying to let them go. And we are sitting here arming Turkey with F-16s every fucking day, because that's how we make our fucking money. We keep war going. That shit is fucking appalling. And we do it here too. And you know who does it here? The fucking police and the feds. But they don't know how to fucking do it. They're scary. And when I say scary, I mean like hood scary. They scary as fuck. You know, they really don't know. I watched them raid a house the other day. And I mean, I had to hide from my life because like when they saw me, they were like, hey, bro. I was like, I ain't no shit. Just nope. You know what I'm saying? Like, that shit is scary as fuck. And I'm white man. But they don't give a fuck. They will shoot you. And they will cover it up. So that's the reality we live in. Oh yeah, Tortuguita Healing Center is beautiful. Y'all need to make sure that you donate if you can, or if you can't donate, then share. Share thing. All of my music, every stream from every bit of my music goes to straight to the Tortuguita Healing Center, as well as Tortuguita's Revenge, which is an album that I helped to produce, and it's got a bunch of really good defendants, and Tortuguita's mom and brother on it, on a song that they sang it towards vigil and ash spreading, and it's, you know, it's just shit. It's how I keep my mental health straight, quite frankly. Just drop some bars on that track. Also, fuck Andy Doe, because I mean, he thinks he can just come out here and like try to get. He uses fear, and you can't use fear against me, bro. You know what I mean? Like, he uses fear to try to scare people, just like COINTELPRO, and just like they're doing right now. Just like they do by their nature, because that's why they exist. The state is violence. It is organized, a gang violence, and that is what they are. So, yeah, and because they can get up, they think they're safe, but those cops will kill their cop friends just as fast if one of them went to say something about Tortuguita in real life. Just like that video. Oh, did they shoot one of their own guys? Huh? What? No. Oh no. Yeah. Boys, hey, come here and shut up. Your camera's on. That's a video that exists. Y'all know, right? Right? There's a video that exists. They're stupid as fuck, and they think everybody's stupid. And they think won't nobody say some shit, but I will fucking speak. And I'm not broken the law. I'm a fucking scholar. I taught middle school, and I saw how these kids in these black communities, I saw the fucked up curriculum they gave me, and they're like, bro, you're smart, and we trust you because you're a veteran, and you're a good guy, and like, you're really, really nice, you know what I mean? And you tell us about mutual aid, and you bring food for kids, and it's like, okay, cool, yeah, you know, all right, yeah, well, they're like, you can make your curriculum, you're smart, you're political science, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm like, all right, and they're like, we'll give you some slides though to use, and you should have seen these slides. It was terrifying to see how they're teaching, and how outdated and like literally like the president of Cuba is Fidel Castro, and I'm like, this what? That motherfucker's what? Like, this is like a year and a half ago. This shit is just crazy how they're teaching these kids, and like, they have the best, the most healthcare in the world, and some of the best doctors, and the lowest rate of infant mortality, and everybody's more literate there than everywhere else, but also bad because communism. Like, okay, bro, there's bad dictatorship and stuff, but like, come on, you can't just like, you know, you teach these kids about social constructs. That's it. You don't tell somebody what to think at all. You tell them the truth, and you say, hey man, like, seriously, words mean things that we think they do, and some things exist only as words, but we let them exist in our lives as a power or a force, then they aren't really real. You know, so just borders or money, right? And they're like, you mean really? It's just I just thought about it. It's just a piece of paper with an old white slave owner on it. These are the sixth graders. I'm like, bro, I didn't say that. You know what I mean? Like, and people want to. You just have to keep it real, and you have to tell people the truth if you care about humanity and yourself. Like, because you'll go crazy if you don't, or you'll hurt the people around you if you don't go crazy. You know what I mean? So like with the things you advocate for, you know, like, so it's important, and I just appreciate every single activist that has been out here doing everything, no matter what happens, no matter what about leftist infighting or anything that happens. Everybody is out here laying their lives on the line, and they know that now after Tortuguita. And everybody who showed up for the referendum still, like that was crazy. Oh, if you ever got to do a referendum in your town, go to your local nightclub, and like shout out to and just hit them up and just stay there all night and give them signatures. You know what I'm saying? But also, just remember, democracy here is fake. And if you do a referendum and get far more amounts on a directly democratic vote on a topic, they can also just be like, actually, yeah, no, we changed our mind. So, democracy who? But yeah, not much love and solidarity from me. I'm going to shut up and let other people talk. I just wanted to get those things out there. There's a book being released, a children's book being published in the fall by Relevant Press, which recants the story of Tortuguita
and the forest in a very loving and friendly way that is kind of like magical, and I don't know, just brings love and solidarity and mentality, like mental release for me and for others. And I know, and all the money from that is going to go straight to the Dorothy Healing Center too. So it's called and you can find me that on my Instagram at rivermichael161. And I'll send a bunch of slides and stuff to Chelsea too, and she can put them up if she wants. Like some different. Oh, there's one right here that. Hold on. Oh, there was a cop that. never mind. So there's a couple pictures, and you brought up like how many people were killed by police, or I think Kiana did, and I just wanted to reiterate those numbers exactly. So in 2017 it was 981, 983 in 18, 999 in 19, 1020 in 2020, 1048 in 2021. Oh, let's go up to 1097 people killed by police in 2023, and in 2022, and then 1163 in 2023, and today, this was like 2 months into 2024, and they'd already murdered 469 people. So this is a fascist like corporatocracy that we exist in, and it's ran by a violent criminal gang of thugs. And yeah, I'll send some article links, and you can share them, and I'll share them. So if you guys want to check that out, they'll be on my profile and where anywhere else. So
yeah, and I can drop links in
you.
the episode like show notes for this too when it goes out. One thing that like before we all kind of wrap up, because I do want to be respectful of y'all's time, and I know we've been together for a minute, but I could talk about the purposeful weaponization of like the school system and trauma, etc., for days on end. And one thing that you had said, Kiana, about like the state started telling on itself with the RICO indictment, and I think even for folks who like aren't reading Noam Chomsky, who aren't super enmeshed in the news, etc., just like sitting down for an hour or 2 hours and looking and putting together the pieces, it is, I mean, I'm neurodivergent as fuck, but I don't think you have to be to see the patterns and the pieces connecting. Like the fact that they are not investing in resources in the community while they are simultaneously investing in more militarized police tactics is on purpose, right? Because they need more crime to punish in order to have more slaves to perpetuate their system of profit. And simultaneously, they're going to need more enforcers to help enforce the criminalization of poverty, et cetera, for this purpose. And so exactly what you were just saying, River, like this is fascist. This is fascism. And we just have to like be connected, I think, to our own nervous systems and our own bodies enough to just sit and look right through through our eyes instead of through the lens of the narratives and the propaganda, et cetera, that we're being fed. And so I'm wondering, like, especially for folks who might not be in ground zero where Cop City is happening, but who are potentially feeling overwhelmed, but know that it's important to contribute and to fight against this, and are kind of wrestling with that tension of like, I'm trying to survive, and I know that I can only survive if we end this fascist like trajectory that we're on. Like, do y'all have any sort of words of wisdom or guidance or like a direction to point folks in for like how they can plug in and learn more, but also, especially as faith leaders, I think you're probably in a particularly good position to provide, like, while also maintaining their like sense of self and sanity as they learn about it?
I think that the first answer for people is to like plug in, find an organization that is doing the work, find a group that's doing the work, and plug in with them. Because I think what gets us a lot of the time is the isolation, putting all these things together, and then feeling like you're the crazy one, right? When you don't have that community and everything just seems so completely clear to you. And if you are only surrounded by people that care about brunch and fancy things, after a while, that tension is going to show up in every like facet of your life, right? So engaging with people that are dialed into, I mean, the struggles that are really going to become more pronounced in the year to come, I think does a great job for the movement. But I also do believe very much in us being very proactive about taking breaks from the work, right? Be intentional about hanging out with friends that maybe see the world like we do, but doing something besides organizing activities. Because I think that if we are seeking like a better world where we're not constantly exploiting our labor, we're going to have to do it in a way that doesn't necessarily just treat us and or treat ourselves like objects toward an end. I think that we also have to be careful about that, because despite our views on oppressive labor systems, a lot of us can sure as hell abuse our own labor. So I think that that is another thing for us to watch out for, practicing what we preach in regard to caring for ourselves and taking care of each other, but really be intentional about making those spaces to hang out with people that think like you, but not always doing the work.
Yeah, I will second that. I will say that, you know, for people who want to be able to plug in and, you know, you want to make sure that you're approaching movement from a trauma responsive, not necessarily just a trauma informed lens, the community resiliency model is a good thing for people to look into, to study, and to understand how to make connection and sustain connection. And plus one to everything that Matthew said about joining an organization, getting with like-minded people, but not always engaging in movement practices. You have to turn this stuff off at some point, because if you don't, you are going to burn out, get overwhelmed, and go crazy. Literally, you will. So it's very important to make sure that we build community, but also, as much as we focus on self-care, we have to focus on community care. We have to build those bridges. We have to make sure that we make connections so that we are effectively caring for each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Kudos to all that, y'all. They've both of y'all, I mean, just being around, seeing your example, and Belkis, you know, like, I'm not gonna say leaders in the movement. There's no leaders. It's a horizontal organ. It's not even an organization. It's a horizontal social movement of people who are just like the anti-fascism is, or, you know, resistance to fascism, if you want to call it, so it doesn't get all buzzwordy, right? Like, there's it's an organization. It's not an organization. It's a free floating horizontal conglomerate of individuals who are just literally don't know each other and show up to make sure that neo-Nazis know that they can't just show up and be racist and hurtful. You know what I mean? Right? And it's the same thing when it comes to Stop Cop City, because guess who we're dealing with? Even if what color they are, they're wearing blue. Mm-hmm. And guess who they're working with? Guess who they're talking to? And guess what they do when they get off? You know what I'm saying? Like, mm-hmm. So there's, you know, you fit in. I've met black people in my hometown. It's just a tiny little town in the panhandle of, you know, and it's, and in the swamp, and people assimilate. They have massive Confederate flag tattoos across their whole back. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I mean, I got nothing but love for anybody, you know, for everybody. And I understand that people, I mean, I studied cognitive dissonance too. You know, I wanted to write my dissertation on that, and I didn't. I ended up switching to how to organize a directly democratic bottom-up grassroots society, and how people are doing it right now and already exists with 7 million people in northeast autonomous Syria, and with 80,000 or well 50,000 now in the Zapatistas, and they have since 94 and since 2013, and how Myanmar is doing PDF. The PDFs are working it up. You know, like how this is how people. And like Revolutionary Catalonia, you know, like Maknovshina, like I think is what it's called in Ukraine. Like There are people do it. Oh, and the original, the Iroquois Confederacy, right? This is it's and Haudenosaunee Confederacy, right? So it's these grass. This is our natural way of life, and it is what real democracy is. You don't need a leader. What is a leader for? Other than to be like, please make decisions for us for 4 years. It's called an electoral authoritarian, right? If you only have a choice and you get to vote somebody in for 4 years, and then they get to do whatever they want. They don't have to do anything you said, and you have no choice. But next you get to vote for them or somebody else that's exactly like them. I love that liberal mecha term. That was ridiculous. And that's where we're at. It's electoral authoritarianism, and direct democracy would be, hey guys, somebody's going to put this. The community defense wants to put a big training facility in this forest, or a couple of people in the community defense will work, which would never happen, right? Because it's all about social ecology. But if that did happen, then people were like, actually, no, let's directly vote about it. Or like it would be proposed, right? And then people directly vote about it. And when referendum says, no, we got to protect that forest. And we also don't want you having that much training. Like you should be here to protect people. There should be a good group of individuals who are really elite that can do what they need to protect people from the outside forces and any domestic terrorists. But like there's you know what I'm saying? There's ways to organize this that people are doing across the world. And just to show that to people is very important. So read about Rojava, read about the Zapatistas. Like that's what you can do to help educate yourself. Read theory, read about and understand what the state really is as a structure and facility, like and how it is. As Abdullah Öcalan says, the state is the fascism is the state in its purest form, like or the state. Either way, it works both ways. I can't remember which way he said it, but and it's Abdullah Öcalan who is the democratic and federalism. So it's very important to study these things first before you. And not before you, but when you and as you immerse yourself into movements that are only valid because we are directly democratic, and that's all we've ever wanted and asked for. And they will kill you for doing that, and for pointing out that when you do that, and they repress it, they will kill you for it. And we just want to let people know that. And they'll kill you for walking down the road and looking weird. But I mean, like it's that's all there is to it. So, so it's not a game. It's really not a game. People, be safe. Take care of your friends. Do mutual aid. Take care of the people in poverty in your neighborhood and the random person who is having a hard time. Don't call the cops. Go help them or call somebody who is qualified to help them, like your local minister or somebody who is ready and willing to go and help those people. Because if you call the cops, they might kill you and your dog too. And just spread love and joy. So, and you can check out and support local artists and artists around the world who are donating so much money and doing these things like Low Key or like River Michael, like No Shoe, like Natani Means, like I can't remember her name. There's plenty of people that I can share. I'll share on Instagram that are directly people who are activists in Atlanta that do Stop Cop City stuff and make specifically activist music and then do this for shows, for benefits. And you can support those people, and you don't have to do anything other than just like turn your Spotify on and listen to some good songs about radical justice or not even. You just share these things. You know what I mean? If you don't want to listen to it yourself, if it's too heavy, share it with somebody who might. That's how we wake people up. We speak to our community, and go talk to your neighbors. Jeez. Bring them some food or something. If you can't, just go help them if you see them working.
Yeah. Well, on that note, just
solidarity
like
for all of that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And just on that note, just to kind of bounce off of what Matthew was saying too about like breaking the isolation, like I think even if it feels like, I think it's very easy to look at like socio-political happenings and be like, oh my God, I'm not smart enough. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't organize against this. But literally just like organize a fucking potluck with like your neighborhood and start building those relationships that are actually going to contribute to the resiliency of our communities, that are going to provide the fabric and the foundation for when these systems inevitably bring about their own demise or whenever we bring about their demise through our work towards liberation. My last question for y'all before I let you hop off is just, so if folks specifically want to support the Stop Cop City movement and the work that you're doing on the ground, and they are not there in Atlanta, and like if finances aren't something that they have a ton of access to, what is the best way for folks to, and obviously it's all interconnected. So like there's things they could work on in their own community. But if they wanted to contribute to or act in a way that was supportive of the Stop Cop City movement, like how could they learn about how to go about doing that?
So aside from following us on socials, my Instagram and TikTok are the same at k.michelle with 2 L's _ATL. There are a number of solidarity pages that you can follow. You can literally search Stop Cop City Solidarity on Instagram. You can follow Defend the Atlanta Forest. You can follow Stop Cop City. You can follow Wilani Defense Society. Wilani Defense Society has lots of chapters across the nation, and they do also regularly post and update about solidarity actions. If you are following any of those pages, I'm sure that you will see in some of the posts other people who are actively doing work around the movement to Stop Cop City. You can follow Strike Black _SCC on Instagram. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You can find us out here because we are on the interwebs.
Lovely. Anything else you want to add to kind of wrap us up with, Matthew or River or Kiana?
No, thank you for having us.
I'll say just keep in mind the Tortuguita Healing Center as well. I'll share something on my page or in Chelsea Gain as well. But it's like a flyer, and it's a place for refugees of all sorts and people who need help or anybody. And we're making sure it's permaculture, and there's like a shack built, and there's places, and it's out in the middle of the jungle, and it's beautiful, and it's to conserve a forest there where people are rapidly clear cutting, and it's a safe space that's owned. And it needs infrastructure and help, and people not even help if you just need somewhere to go, be safe, and you're an activist, or to relax and go be amongst the trees and the birds and the monkeys and the sloths in the jungle. Like, it's a very important place, and for a very important person, and in honor of a very, very important person and a martyr for the cause of human evolution and love and respect. So and solidarity against fucking violent criminal gangs. The most violent criminal gang. I have statistics that are shared on my Instagram showing that police kill more people per capita than gangs, and it's ridiculous. It's like ridiculous. It's like, you guys, who protects what? So it's hard to think about these things and keep them on your mind all the time, and a lot of people want to tell people who are very, very stuck on it and stay on it and talk about it all the time to shut up sometimes because it's stressful. If you have to do that, do it in a respectful way, because people are just trying to help other people by educating them about this stuff. And I know it's heavy. Some people live it and they can't get it out of their heads. So, because it is the reality, and they know how deep and how horrible and how atrocious it really is. But they also know how beautiful it really is and how much we have to protect it. So, do not protect the system, abolish the system, and protect the people, and protect the earth, in which is also fastly dying. So, and we go with it, and our children go with it. So, love and solidarity, y'all. Viva Tortuguita.
Matthew, any last words from you?
All right.
No, I think that we've covered a lot of ground here. Well, there is something. I think that Atlanta was a test ground in a lot of ways, especially with the Cop City project. And if you noticed, when the repression started to become most successful, you've seen Cop City projects pop up in 47 states now. I mean, yeah, it's great if people are helping us with this struggle in Atlanta, but there's probably going to be a struggle coming to a theater near you pretty soon.
Occupying trees,
and
we need occupying trees in Chicago right now
to be, vigilant, in that respect of making sure that you're building up
a strong base locally,
Yes.
wherever you are, because you're going to need it. And any, little beefs that you might have with other organizations that are like-minded, get rid of that shit now.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
right.
make sure that
Really?
you're all operating on the same accord. Look up the idea of Paul's principles in regards to our engagement moving forward, and learn something from our mistakes. Make sure that you're, in one accord as possible. So.
Thank you. Super